I spent 3 months' salary on a ring for a woman who loved me less than her career advancement. The night I planned to propose, I accidentally overheard a conversation that destroyed not only my wedding plans, but all my beliefs about our 3-year relationship. She called me sweet but predictable, telling another man he was the one she really wanted. What was worse, her willingness to accept my proposal only to let me down easy later, or what I learned afterward from her best friend. This is a story of betrayal I didn't deserve, and how I rebuilt my life from the rubble. My name is Overheard. I'm 34 years old and own Reed Construction, a small but successful contracting business I built from the ground up. I take pride in my work, honest labor with tangible results, something you can see and touch at the end of the day. I've always been a straightforward guy. What you see is what you get. Maybe that's why I never saw through Isabella's facade. We met 3 years ago when she was the listing agent for a property I was renovating to flip. Isabella Taylor, tall, confident, with a smile that could seal any deal. She was the kind of woman who commanded attention when she walked into a room. Not flashy, just magnetic. As a realtor, she had this way of making you feel like you were getting exactly what you wanted while she was getting what she wanted too. Our relationship didn't start right away. We kept running into each other professionally. She'd show me properties with potential. I'd give her my honest assessment of what they needed. We developed a rhythm, a professional respect that gradually shifted into something more personal. After about 6 months of this dance, I finally asked her out. We went to this hole-in-the-wall Italian place I loved. I remember she seemed impressed that I knew the owner by name, that I wasn't trying to show off with some fancy restaurant where the portions wouldn't fill up a kid. She laughed at my jokes, asked about my business, shared stories about nightmare clients. It felt easy, natural. From there, things progressed steadily. Weekend trips to the coast, meeting each other's friends, eventually meeting families. I introduced her to my crew, and they liked her. Another good sign, I thought. My guys can sniff out phonies like bloodhounds. Isabella fit into my life like she'd always been there. 2 years in, I was convinced she was the one. We complemented each other perfectly. I was the steady, practical one, and she brought excitement and new ideas. We talked about the future, about the kind of house we'd want to build together someday. I'd draft rough plans. She'd critique them with a realtor's eye. It felt like we were building something real, something lasting. That's why I decided to propose. I spent weeks searching for the perfect ring. Nothing too flashy, but substantial enough to show her what she meant to me. I even consulted her friend Zoe for advice, wanted to get it right. Zoe seemed enthusiastic, helped me pick something that matched Isabella's taste. She's going to be so surprised, Zoe had said with a smile I couldn't quite read at the time. I planned the proposal for our anniversary dinner. Had it all worked out. Dinner at that same Italian place where we had our first date, then a walk along the riverfront where I'd get down on one knee. Classic, maybe, but meaningful. I wanted to tie it all together, show her that I remembered everything about our time together. If only I'd known what was waiting for me, just around the corner. That proposal never happened. Instead, I got a brutal education on the difference between what we build in our minds and the harsh reality that tears it all down. The week before I planned to propose was a blur of anticipation and last-minute details. I had the ring, a classic round diamond set in white gold, elegant but not flashy, just like Isabella. Every time I touched the box in my pocket, my heart would race. This was big, life-changing, and I wanted everything to be perfect. I called Isabella's parents to ask for their blessing. Old-fashioned, maybe, but my dad had taught me to do things right. Her father, a retired banker, seemed pleased but not surprised. "We've been expecting this call," he said warmly. "You're a good man, Oliver. You built something solid. Isabella needs that kind of foundation." Those words meant a lot to me. I'd grown up watching my own parents' rock-solid marriage. 35 years, and still going strong. That's what I wanted with Isabella. Something built to last. I enlisted my buddy Mike, my foreman at work, to help with the logistics. He arranged for a small team of our friends to be at the riverfront after dinner. The plan was to have them waiting with champagne, ready to celebrate once she said yes. Mike even suggested we hang string lights in the gazebo, where I'd propose. "Women love that romantic crap," he said, punching my shoulder. "She'll eat it up, Ollie." 2 days before the big night, I picked up the ring. The jeweler, an older Italian guy named Carlo, winked as he handed me the velvet box. "She's a lucky woman," he said. Not many men put such thought into these things. I tucked the ring into my jacket pocket, where it seemed to burn a hole for the rest of the day. I couldn't focus on anything else. At the construction site, I nearly approved the wrong shipment of lumber, caught only by Mike's questioning look. "Get her head on straight," he laughed. "Save the daydreaming for the honeymoon." The night before the proposal, I couldn't sleep. I kept running through the plan in my mind, imagining Isabella's face when she saw the ring, when she realized what was happening. Would she cry? Laugh? Both. I pictured our future together, building our own house with my own hands, starting a family, growing old together on a porch we designed together. I called the restaurant one last time to confirm our reservation. Marco, the owner, assured me everything was set. "The same table as your first date," he promised. "And the special wine you requested is chilled and waiting." Friday arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. I left work early to shower and change, putting on the new suit I'd bought for the occasion. Dark blue, Italian cut. Isabella had once mentioned she liked me in blue. I checked my pocket a dozen times to make sure the ring was there. Called Mike to confirm he and the others would be in position at the gazebo by 9 p.m. Everything was ready. Perfect. At 7 o'clock, I drove to Isabella's place to pick her up. My stomach was in knots, but the good kind. Anticipation, not dread. I'd never been more sure of anything in my life. I pulled into her driveway and sat for a moment, taking deep breaths. This was it. By the end of the night, we'd be engaged. Our new life together would officially begin. What I didn't know then was that fate had other plans. The life I'd so carefully designed with Isabella was about to come crashing down around me, and I'd be left standing in the rubble, wondering how I'd missed the warning signs. I checked my watch, 6:58 p.m. I was right on time, as usual. I grabbed the small bouquet of lilies I'd picked up, her favorites, and headed to her door, rehearsing the evening one final time in my head. Little did I know, I was walking straight into a nightmare. I knocked on Isabella's door, flowers in hand, nerves making my palms sweat. When no one answered, I frowned. Her car was in the driveway, and we had clearly set plans for 7 o'clock. I checked my phone, no messages. After knocking once more, I remembered I had her spare key. She'd given it to me 6 months ago when I installed new hardwood floors in her kitchen. "Keep it," she'd said. "Mi casa, yes, su casa." I'd felt special then, trusted. I used the key, calling her name as I entered. "Isabella? It's me, Oliver." The house was quiet, but I heard her voice coming from the back bedroom. She was on the phone, her tone hushed and intimate. Not wanting to interrupt, I moved quietly toward the sound. "I just need to get through tonight," I heard her say. "After this weekend, I can figure out how to let him down easy." I froze, my body suddenly cold despite the warm evening. "You know you're the one I want, Richard." "Not him." There was a pause, a soft laugh. "Oliver's sweet, but he's so predictable. He thinks we're building a future. But honey, I need more excitement than a lifetime of construction sites and renovation projects." The flowers slipped from my hand, landing silently on her plush carpet. My mind couldn't process what I was hearing. Richard? Her colleague from the real estate office. The guy she'd assured me was just a friend when I'd questioned their late-night client meetings. "Tonight's dinner is going to be painful," Isabella continued. "I think he might actually propose. Can you imagine? I'll have to act surprised, but trust me, the only ring I want is the one you promised." I backed away silently, my heart hammering in my chest. The velvet box in my pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Everything, our relationship, our supposed future, her love for me, it was all a lie. I slipped out the front door without making a sound. Outside, the twilight air hit my lungs like I'd been underwater. I stumbled to my truck, my mind reeling with her words. "Oliver, is it you out there?" Isabella called from inside the house. Too late. I was already gone. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind replaying Isabella's words on an endless, torturous loop. "Oliver's sweet, but he's so predictable." Each repetition drove the knife deeper. My phone buzzed relentlessly, Isabella calling, then texting, probably wondering where the hell I was. I couldn't bring myself to answer. Around midnight, I found myself parked at one of my construction sites, a custom home I was building for a young family. I sat in my truck, staring at the half-finished structure silhouetted against the night sky. Just that morning, I'd imagined building something like this for Isabella and me. What a joke. Mike called around 12:30. Ollie, what the hell, man? We've been at the gazebo for hours. Isabella's been blowing up my phone. Did you chicken out or what? I couldn't even muster the energy to be embarrassed about leaving my friends waiting with champagne that would never be opened. It's over, Mike, I said flatly. What do you mean over? You haven't even proposed yet. She's cheating. With Richard from her office. My voice sounded strange, even to my own ears, hollow, detached. That slick bastard. Are you sure? Mike's tone shifted immediately from confusion to protective anger. Heard it straight from her mouth. She was on the phone with him when I arrived, talking about letting me down easy after I proposed. I laughed bitterly. Can you believe that? She was going to say yes and then dump me later. Jesus Christ, Ollie. I'm coming to get you. Where are you? No, I said firmly. I need to be alone right now. After convincing Mike I wasn't about to drive off a cliff, I hung up. The ring box was still in my pocket. I took it out, opened it, the diamond catching the moonlight in a way that suddenly seemed mocking rather than beautiful. 3 months' salary, sitting in the palm of my hand. 3 months of work to buy a symbol for a relationship that had been a lie. Around 2 a.m., I finally drove home to my apartment. The one Isabella had helped me decorate, her touch visible in every room. The framed photos of us on the bookshelf. The throw pillows she'd insisted would pull the room together. The coffee maker she'd bought because she hated the cheap one I'd had since college. I collapsed on the couch, too drained to even make it to the bedroom. My phone had finally stopped buzzing. 43 missed calls and 26 text messages. I couldn't bear to read them. Sleep eluded me. I kept picturing Isabella and Richard laughing at me behind my back. Had they been together all along? How many times had she been with him when she told me she was showing houses or at open houses? How many lies had I swallowed without question because I trusted her? At dawn, I finally dozed off, only to be jolted awake by my doorbell an hour later. I knew without checking that it would be Isabella. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, the part that still couldn't believe this was happening, needed to see her face. I opened the door to find her standing there, mascara smudged like she'd been crying, still wearing the dress she must have put on for our dinner. The dinner where I was supposed to propose. Oliver, she said, her voice breaking. What happened last night? I waited for hours. You didn't answer my calls. I was worried sick. She was good. I had to give her that. If I hadn't heard her on the phone, I might have believed the concern in her eyes. Might have apologized for standing her up. Might have rescheduled the proposal for another night, walking blindly into a future with a woman who saw me as a temporary placeholder. But I had hurt her, and nothing would ever be the same again. I don't understand, Isabella said, stepping into my apartment uninvited. Why did you just disappear last night? I was worried sick. I stared at her, searching for any sign that this was difficult for her, the lying, the pretending. But she was a pro. If I hadn't heard her with my own ears, I might have been the one apologizing. I was at your house, I said flatly. Around 7. Heard your phone conversation with Richard. Her expression shifted so quickly it was almost impressive. Surprise, then confusion, then the calculated regrouping. What are you talking about? Cut the act, Isabella. I heard everything. About letting me down easy after this weekend. About how I'm sweet but predictable. About the ring you really want being from him. She paled slightly, but recovered with remarkable speed. You were spying on me? You came into my house without permission. Classic deflection, making me the villain. I had your key, remember? I was picking you up for a date. The date you were dreading because you thought I might propose. Her eyes darted to my pocket, perhaps looking for the ring box. Oliver, whatever you think you heard. I know what I heard. I walked to the kitchen, putting physical distance between us before my anger got the better of me. 3 years, Isabella. 3 years of me thinking we were building something together, when you were just killing time until something better came along. It's not like that, she insisted, following me. Richard isn't. Don't. I held up my hand. I'm not interested in the details of your affair. The only thing I want to know is how long. How long have you been lying to my face? She hesitated, and in that pause I had my answer. Long enough that she couldn't pretend it was a recent development. Was any of it real? I asked, hating the vulnerability in my voice. Or was I just a reliable backup plan all along? Instead of answering directly, Isabella's eyes welled with tears. Beautiful, convincing tears. I do care about you, Oliver. So much. It's just complicated. No, I said firmly. It's actually pretty simple. You cheated. You lied. We're done. Oliver, please. She stepped toward me, reaching for my arm. Let's talk about this. Richard was a mistake, a moment of weakness. What we have is real. I pulled away from her touch like it burned. Don't contact me again, Isabella. I'll send someone to get my things from your place. You're overreacting. This is why. She caught herself, but not quickly enough. This is why what? I challenged. This is why you were looking for more excitement elsewhere? Because I'm too predictable? Too boring. Isabella's expression hardened, her tears mysteriously drying up. I never said you were boring. But since we're being honest, yes, Oliver. I need more than plans for a white picket fence and Sunday barbecues. I'm not ready to settle down. Then you should have said that 3 years ago. I replied, opening my front door in clear dismissal, instead of wasting both our time. As she walked out, head high as if she were the wounded party, I felt a strange sense of relief beneath the anger and hurt. I dodged a bullet. Imagine if I'd actually proposed, or worse, married her before discovering who she really was. After Isabella left, I spent the weekend in a haze of anger and disbelief. Mike came by with beer and pizza, but conversation was minimal. He knew when to shut up, a rare quality in a friend. We just sat watching baseball, the familiar rhythm of the game providing some escape from my thoughts. Sunday night, I finally turned my phone back on. 20 more missed calls from Isabella, and a barrage of texts ranging from apologetic to accusatory. I deleted them all without reading past the previews. Then I blocked her number. Monday morning, I threw myself into work. Physical labor was exactly what I needed. Swinging a hammer, demolishing old drywall, building something tangible. My crew knew something was wrong, but respected my silence. Around noon, an unfamiliar car pulled up to the job site. Isabella's father stepped out, looking uncomfortable in his dress shoes on the dirt and gravel. Oliver, he said, approaching me with his hand extended. Got a minute? I set down my tools, surprised by his appearance. Mr. Taylor, what brings you here? Isabella told us what happened, he said, his expression grave. Her mother and I wanted to hear your side. I laughed without humor. Did she tell you she's been cheating? That she was stringing me along while seeing her colleague Richard? His face fell. She said you misunderstood a conversation. That Richard is just a work friend helping her plan a surprise for you. That's not what I heard, sir. I looked him in the eye. I heard her say I was predictable and boring, that she was going to let me down easy after this weekend. After I proposed, he was silent for a moment, processing. Then he sighed heavily. I was afraid of that. When she was growing up, Isabella always wanted what she couldn't have. Once she got it, she lost interest. The honesty surprised me. You don't seem shocked. I love my daughter, but I know who she is. He shook his head. Her mother thought you might be the one to finally settle her down. I hope so too. I'm sorry, Mr. Taylor. Don't be. He clasped my shoulder firmly. You're better off knowing now. And for what it's worth, I think she's making the biggest mistake of her life. As he turned to leave, he paused. She doesn't know I came here, but I thought you deserve to know someone believes you. I watched him drive away, feeling strangely validated. At least someone in Isabella's life could see the truth. 2 weeks after the non-proposal, I was no longer waking up with that immediate punch of betrayal. Progress, I guess. Mike convinced me to meet him and some of the guys for beers after work. My first social outing since everything went down. There he is. Mike called as I walked into O'Malley's. The prodigal contractor returns. The guys made room for me at their table, carefully avoiding any mention of Isabella. We talked about work, sports, Jim's new truck, normal stuff that felt absurdly comforting. 3 beers in, Mike nudged me. Don't look now, but she just walked in. Of course. The universe wasn't done with me yet. Isabella stood at the bar, looking as gorgeous as ever in a sleek dress that was definitely not typical O'Malley's attire. She was scanning the room, and when her eyes landed on our table, she made a beeline toward us. This should be good, muttered Dave, another of my crew. Oliver, Isabella said, arriving at our table with a practiced smile for the others. Can we talk? Privately. The guys all suddenly became very interested in their beers. I sighed. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here. Her smile tightened. I'd rather not air our private business in front of an audience. These men, I gestured around the table. They're not an audience. They're my friends, and they all know what happened, so there's nothing private left to discuss. Isabella's composure slipped slightly. That's not fair. You're only telling one side of the story. There's only one side to cheating, Dave muttered, earning a glare from Isabella. 5 minutes, Oliver. That's all I'm asking. Part of me, a weak, hopeful part, wanted to hear her out. But then I remembered her words. Predictable, boring, let him down easy. The ring's still sitting in my dresser drawer at home. I don't have 5 minutes for you. Isabella, I said firmly. Not anymore. Her face flushed with anger. So that's it. 3 years together, and you won't even listen to my explanation? I already heard your explanation. When you didn't know I was listening. That was the honest version. Isabella looked around the table, perhaps hoping for an ally among my friends. Finding none, she straightened her shoulders. You're making a mistake, Oliver. Call me when you've calmed down and are ready to be reasonable. As she walked away, head high, Mike raised his glass. Dodged a bullet there, my friend. He was right. But bullets still leave damage, even when they miss. A month after the O'Malley's confrontation, I'd almost convinced myself I was moving on. I threw myself into work, taking on more projects than was probably wise. My days were packed with client meetings, site visits, and physical labor, leaving little time for dwelling on what might have been. The ring still sat in my dresser drawer. I should have returned it, but somehow couldn't bring myself to face the jeweler's pitying look. Saturday morning, I was grabbing coffee at my usual spot when I heard someone call my name. I turned to find Zoe, Isabella's friend, standing behind me in line. Oliver, she said again, looking uncomfortable. Do you have a minute? My instinct was to say no. Zoe had been Isabella's confidant, the last person I wanted to talk to. But something in her expression stopped me. Make it quick, I said, stepping aside with my coffee. I owe you an apology, she began, surprising me. I knew about Richard before you did. The admission hit like a punch to the gut. You helped me pick out her ring, I said, my voice hard. Knowing she was cheating, Zoe winced. I told her to end it with Richard or come clean to you. She promised she would, after you proposed. I laughed bitterly. After I proposed? What kind of twisted logic is that? Isabella's logic, Zoe said with a grimace. She convinced herself she was just having cold feet, that once you proposed, she'd realize you were the one she wanted. She thought she could make herself choose you, while keeping Richard on the side, just in case. I finished for her. Nice. Zoe didn't deny it. The thing is, Oliver, this isn't the first time she's done this. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Isabella always does this. In every relationship. Zoe looked genuinely regretful. She keeps a backup, a second option. She's afraid of fully committing to anyone. And you just telling me this now? The anger I thought I processed came roaring back. I should have told you sooner, she admitted. But Isabella's been my friend since college. I've always covered for her, made excuses. It took seeing what she did to you, how she was going to let you propose knowing what she was doing behind your back, to realize I couldn't keep enabling her. I took a long sip of coffee, trying to process this new information. So Richard wasn't the first. Not even close, Zoe sighed. She was still texting her ex when she started dating you. Then there was her gym trainer, a client, and finally Richard. The scope of Isabella's deception was staggering. I thought we had 3 solid years together, with just a recent betrayal at the end. But according to Zoe, our entire relationship had been built on lies. Why tell me this now? I asked. What's the point? Because you deserve to know it wasn't you, Oliver. Zoe's eyes were earnest. It was never about you not being enough. This is who Isabella is. She's done it to every good man she's been with. As painful as Zoe's revelation was, it provided a strange sort of closure. The problem hadn't been that I was too predictable or boring. The problem was Isabella's inability to commit, to be satisfied with one person, no matter who that person was. Thank you for telling me, I said finally. I needed to hear that. As Zoe left, I realized I felt lighter somehow. The weight of self-doubt, of wondering what I could have done differently, had lifted. Nothing would have been enough for Isabella. And that wasn't my failure. It was hers. 2 months after Zoe's revelation, life had settled into a new normal. I finally returned the engagement ring, taking the financial hit on the custom piece, but feeling lighter without that physical reminder sitting in my drawer. The jeweler, to his credit, Didn't ask questions, just nodded sympathetically and processed the return. Work was booming. I'd landed a major renovation project for a historic downtown building, the kind of high-profile job that could take reconstruction to the next level. My days were filled with meetings, planning sessions, and hands-on work that left me satisfyingly exhausted. Mike noticed the change in me. "You look better, man," he commented one afternoon as we reviewed blueprints. "Like you've put it all behind you." Getting there, I admitted. "Work helps. Work always helps," he agreed. "But you need more than just work, Ollie. When's the last time you went on a date?" I shrugged. The thought of dating again made my stomach churn. Not ready for that circus. "Not all women are like Isabella," Mike reminded me. "My sister-in-law has a friend. No setups." I cut him off firmly. "When I'm ready, I'll handle it myself." That evening, I was grabbing takeout from the Italian place. Yes, the same one where I'd planned to take Isabella before proposing, when my phone buzzed with a text. "Isabella, I hear congratulations are in order. Big downtown project. I always knew you'd make it." I stared at the message, surprised she'd bypassed my block. Must be using a new number. After a moment's hesitation, I responded, "Thanks. How did you hear about it?" Her reply came quickly. "It's all over the business section. Plus, your company sign is hard to miss when I drive downtown." Of course. The local paper had run a feature on the historic renovation. I hadn't thought about Isabella seeing it. Another text arrived. "I miss you, Oliver. I made mistakes. Terrible ones. But I've been in therapy, working on myself. I understand now why I did what I did." My thumb hovered over the screen. Part of me, a small, weak part, still missed her. Not the real Isabella, who had cheated and lied, but the woman I thought I knew. The future I planned. But Zoe's words echoed in my mind. This wasn't Isabella's first time. It was a pattern, a fundamental flaw in how she approached relationships. "I'm glad you're working on yourself," I replied carefully. "But we're done, Isabella. Completely done. Can we just talk? Coffee. I'm not the same person." I almost laughed. 3 months of therapy, and she thought she'd overcome a lifetime pattern of behavior. That wasn't how real change worked. As a builder, I knew you couldn't just slap a fresh coat of paint on rotten wood and call it fixed. "No," I typed. "I wish you well, but I've moved on." I blocked the new number before she could respond. It felt different this time. Not an angry act of self-preservation, but a calm, deliberate choice. I didn't need to hear her excuses or explanations. I didn't need closure from her. For the first time since that night, I'd overheard her conversation with Richard. I felt truly free. Not just of Isabella, but of the self-doubt that had plagued me in the aftermath. I knew my worth now, and I wasn't going to settle for someone who saw me as a backup plan. 1 year after the night, I almost proposed to Isabella. I stood on the roof deck of the newly renovated Harmon building, surveying downtown. The historic restoration had been challenging, demanding every ounce of my expertise and creativity, but the results spoke for themselves. The ribbon-cutting ceremony earlier that day had been attended by the mayor and covered by local media. Reconstruction was officially on the map. "Not a bad view," said a voice behind me. I turned to find Lisa, the architectural historian who'd consulted on the project, admiring both the skyline and my handiwork. "Not bad at all," I agreed. We developed an easy rapport over months of collaboration, her knowledge of historical techniques complementing my practical building experience. "So what's next for reconstruction?" she asked, leaning against the railing beside me. "After a success like this, you must have developers lining up." I smiled. "A few interesting offers. But I'm being selective. Quality over quantity." "Smart approach." Lisa nodded appreciatively. "Rare in this business." As we discussed potential projects, I realized how comfortable I felt in her presence. There was no game playing, no hidden agenda, just genuine professional respect that had gradually evolved into something more personal. When Lisa mentioned a new Italian restaurant she wanted to try, I found myself saying, "Maybe we could check it out together sometime." She looked surprised but pleased. "I'd like that." It wasn't a grand romantic gesture or a carefully orchestrated plan, just an honest invitation from one person to another. And somehow, that felt exactly right. Later that evening, as I drove home, I reflected on how much had changed in a year. The pain of Isabella's betrayal had faded, leaving behind valuable lessons rather than lasting bitterness. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to value transparency over flash, to recognize that real connections don't require constant excitement or drama, just mutual respect and genuine compatibility. I'd also learned that some things can't be fixed once broken. Isabella had reached out several more times over the months, each attempt meeting the same firm boundary. Some foundations are too compromised to build upon. As I pulled into my driveway, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for too long. My life was back on solid ground, a structure built carefully, with quality materials and proper techniques. And if Lisa became part of that structure, it would be because we chose to build something together, brick by brick, with honesty as our cornerstone. Sometimes the best houses are the ones you build after the first design falls through.